Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's RC chat. We know people are still connecting, so we will give you time to connect or to tell your neighbor, your virtual neighbor, that the Renaissance Center is live and speaking this evening about caregiving and caregivers and just different areas that are of interest to the community. These RC chats are held with you in mind so that we can make sure you are abreast of everything that you need to know for your emotional and mental well-being. And this month is National Caregivers Month. So we felt it was definitely time to give the caregivers their due. And there's so many people in the community that are caregiving, and we thank God for our caregivers. The Renaissance Center is still offering free sessions. It's 2 free sessions to Baltimore County and Baltimore City residents, and you can call 410-409-0025 or check our website out. So we thank you for taking advantage of these resources over these past several months. And as long as we are able to, we will continue to offer these free sessions. So thank you. So we want to get right to our discussion this evening. Again, we're talking about caring for the caregivers or just caregiving in general. And we have a great group of caregivers on this evening. So I want to get started, and I'm going to briefly introduce everyone, and then we'll go right into the questions that the panel has. Also, don't forget, you can put your questions in the YouTube chat or in the Facebook area, and they will get them to me so that we can make sure we answer as many questions as we are able to. I'm going to get started with introducing our guests. First guest I'm going to introduce is Mary Price. She is one of our co-leaders of the Morning Star Baptist Church Caregivers Ministry. She's also the founder and president of Women's Charities of Maryland Incorporated, and has been leading that for over 27 years, and recently retired, yay, from the Maryland Department of Health, and has just been a resource for me. I email her and Cleo, who I'll introduce in a minute, often, and just for advice, whether it's for myself or others. So the MSBC Caregivers Ministry is a great resource, and I thank you, Mary, for being on this evening. She took leave of absence from her retirement tour to be with us tonight. That's what I'm calling it. She's on the road already. That's how you do retirement.
Yes.
All right, you hit the road. You hit the
Thank
road.
you.
So I thank you for taking leave from your travels to be with us this evening. And then we have Cleo Lytle, one of our caregiver co-leaders. She's a registered nurse and has been serving in this community of caregiving and nursing for, do you want to say how long, Cleo, or you want me to say? Over 40 years.
Oh,
So
you can say it.
40 years. So think about it. She has a lot of experience in home health, assisted living, hospice, in those facilities and in the homes of our loved ones. And so we have 2 dedicated persons right here that have been sharing, alongside us on this caregiver journey. Then we have Cheryl Pratt. This is the most recent team member. That's what I'm gonna call her now, because it takes a village when you're caregiving to make these things happen and make decisions and choices. And so she is self-titled senior home advocate. And so she helps people in the community find places for their loved ones in different areas. So she helps you. She's that person, that navigator, that if you need help, you can reach out to her and she will help you find the most suitable facility for your loved one. And so it's great to have Cheryl on here. And then we have Karen, who is, she's our caregiver rep, right? And I know the men are saying, hey, we're out here caregiving too. I know men, shade to the men, but I know you all are doing it too. So I couldn't have everybody on here tonight. So the ladies are represented tonight. I'll make sure we have men on the next time. But Karen's been a caregiver for the last couple years. And, most recently, her mother, who she was caring for, did pass away. So I do want to, offer our condolences to you, Karen, and appreciate you still being on. For those of you who don't know, I asked Karen to do this months ago, like it's just months and months ago. So, we had no idea that she'd be on the journey she's on now. And she still can see that, and said she would come and support. So that's just how the life of a caregiver is, though. We never know the length of the journey or when the journey is going to end. And so I appreciate Karen for, be still considering to be on here tonight. So we're going to get to the questions. Thanks again to those of you who are joining us in the, whether you're on YouTube, the church website, or Facebook. I appreciate you being here with us. So the first question I want to ask is, I'm going to ask Karen this, and if hopefully you don't mind me, everybody, calling you by your first name. So, Karen, how did you become a caregiver or how did you become a caregiver? And then I'll ask the other persons.
Actually, thank you, first of all, for this opportunity. And thank you for bringing light to this, because I think it's a great support for people who have, especially in my role, have been thrown into caregiving. My mother was living with her sister. I don't know if you mentioned, but she had dementia. So I had to, her and her sister were living together with caregivers. And my aunt got sick. And my mother couldn't live by herself. So she came to live with me. And while I was still working, I had caregivers, but when the pandemic hit, all the funds got wiped out and everything. And so I became my mother's full-time caregiver. And it was quite the journey, especially for someone who has not been trained to do that. It was quite the journey. But I learned a lot of lessons along the way.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And we'll get to some of those lessons. And I think we can all say that sometimes you're not prepared for the journey, because for a lot of us, it's sudden. It's a sudden reason, that we become a caregiver. It's not anything we plan. For the rest of you ladies, how did you begin working with caregivers and their loved ones? And we'll start with Mary. If you can answer that, how did you start working with caregivers?
Well, it started back when I started working for the Maryland Department of Health over 20 something years ago. I started working with youth and families, and I was working with them from the health perspective, but what I was finding out was they were missing that point of getting services for their loved ones when it came to finances, respite, and all those different areas where I didn't, get involved. I wasn't involved with. So I said, I need to get involved with helping them from the other perspective. So I formed Women's Charities of Maryland. And from that, I had my board members, teachers, nurses, everyone to join in to help the families from the other perspective, to help them connect to services, outside of the Maryland Department of Health and throughout the state of Maryland. So that's how I got involved. And even when I was 20, I had the opportunity to take care of my dad, who had prostate cancer. And during that time, he didn't want to get chemo. He just wanted to come home and spend his last days. So my dad lived to about 2 years, and I just took care of him at home, and a nurse came in to take care of him. And I learned so much at an early age. So throughout my life of being a caregiver and working in that arena, that's how I got involved. And it's very rewarding to see people, meet their needs.
Thank you. Cleo, how did you come to work with caregivers?
I, as a professional caregiver, as a registered nurse, I often ask, or have been asked many times in my career, what made you want to become a nurse? And for a long time, I said, well, I don't know. It's just what I wanted to do. But as I reflect, I give that to my mother. At age 11, I was sick. I became ill. I had what's called rheumatic fever. And that is a result of the bacteria that causes strep throat. It can settle in your joints, or it can settle in your bloodstream and in your heart. So it settled in my heart. And so I was on bed rest at age 11. And my mom just took such good care of me. And so I would tell people homeschooling is not new. I was homeschooled when I was 11. And my mom she wouldn't let me do anything for myself. The doctor said bed rest, and that's what she did. And when you're 11, you kind of don't want somebody giving you a bath or anything. So I'm giving her that responsibility for my becoming a professional caregiver. And then later in life, my mom became ill with colon cancer. At that time, I lived in the state of Oregon. And so she came out and stayed with my family while she was getting treatment for that. So that's kind of been my history of caregiving. And then when I finished my master's in spiritual and pastoral care, I started some caregiver groups in my home for persons, because I just felt it's something that was really, really needed. And I was really happy when we got the caregiver support ministry started up at Morning Star.
Thanks, Cleo. Cheryl, what's your interest, and how did you get started helping caregivers?
Yeah, but when I think about it, when it originally came to me, it actually came to me really, really clear this morning. It came to me to say that I am the granddaughter of Miss Naomi, and I am the daughter of Miss Ruth. And I have seen through a generation of how my family has cared for one another, them always being caregivers. And knowing that, some some people are unable to do that, and they don't know what's available for them if they're not able to care for their loved ones in their home or family member. Because I've come up through a generation where, we did take care of mom, dad, sister, brothers, and aunties in our home. But it does come a time, because of different circumstances, that we have to reach out to different facilities and different places and to understand what they offer. And so I began to advocate and to grow my business and finding facilities that would help families financially, spiritually, and giving them the care that they couldn't do, so that they would not feel that guilt, but also just felt the reassurance that if you couldn't do it, that someone else was there to help you nester in, to know that when you walked out the door, that they were going to take care of your loved one.
Thanks. Yeah, a lot of people do feel, guilty when they can't be there, a lot of times. And I'm, looking at some of the statistics, many caregivers work full-time or part-time. So they're caregiving, they're working. Many caregivers find themselves at a crossroads, and the caregiving can impact, of course, their ability to hold a job, keep a job, maintain their work hours, get the proper rest they need so they can care for their loved ones. So sometimes, a facility, we don't necessarily want to use that option, but sometimes it's something that we might have to consider at some point when it begins to get to be too much. So it's good that there are options, and there were always options. It's just that for most of us, we want that to be the last option if possible. And so in that regard, what support financially and emotionally do caregivers need to manage their roles? I'm going to start with you, Cheryl. What do caregivers need to make it work?
So that the one thing is, I would say that if you're going to be, depending on far as you're going to care for someone at home, you need, when caring for that person, you would need to know exactly their finances, because you are going to have to use a part of their finances to take care of them. Because if you bring them into your home, you're bringing an extra person into your home, and you never want to think that you have to take money from your mom or your dad. But the truth of the matter is, to all in give them that proper care, you have to have that information to help them. There's no more not waiting till the last moment to have an advance directive. To have that, it's not delinquishing anything from a person if you get them to sign power of attorney over to you to assist them. So there are things that when you do become a caregiver, we all know that your heart is in the right place because you've made the decision, but you also have to be knowing the actual financial portion of that so you can sustain doing that job, especially if you're a person who works and you have to cut your hours, or if you have to bring someone in to your home while you have to go out to work to sit with that loved one while you're home.
Thanks, Cheryl. Anyone else wanted to comment on that? What is needed financially or emotionally for caregivers?
This is Mary. One of the biggest challenges I've found with a lot of the parents who take care of kids, and then older folks who are taking care of their parents, the sharing of responsibility. It can be overwhelming for someone to care for a loved one when they have to work, and then they have to deal with their finances. So having family members to help with, the financing, someone understanding the finance part, who's going to be responsible. A lot of times the caregiver cannot play both roles, handle the finance part and to handle taking care of that loved one. It's that sharing of, splitting it out, especially when there are siblings in the family who can do one or the other. So that's very important,
Yeah, sometimes people don't know that it's okay to ask for help. And I know a lot of times we assume people are going to help, but a lot of times you have to reach out and ask them, because we make a lot of the hard work look easy. So people are like, oh, they don't need help, they got this. But, sometimes as a caregiver, you have to ask for help.
And to add, with working with male caregivers, they don't look at themselves as caregivers. I've worked with a lot of men who are caregivers to their mom, but they say, I'm not a caregiver. Oh, that's my mom. I'm going to take care of my mom. But they are still caregivers, and there is support out there for them, and they need to, put in their mindset, I can ask for help. Yes, that is your mom, but you're still a caregiver, and there is support out there and resources for you. So I just wanted to share that.
Thanks.
And I'm Karen. I'd like to add to what Cheryl said. I think that she's correct in terms of financing. And that's so important that I think a lot of times in families, we don't want to have those conversations, but you never know where you're going to land. And if you have been thrown into a situation where you have to care for your loved ones, finances is definitely going to be a part of it. And if we have the finances in place, you also talked about the emotional portion of it. And I think that it's really important that we take care of our emotional health too, because I found that when I got thrown into it, actually a lot of issues from my childhood began to rise because I was dealing with dementia, and dementia can look ugly from time to time. And I actually had to seek therapy. So I think when we talk about the caregiving, and yes, we want to love on our parents because they loved on us, and we want to give them the best care that we possibly can. But I think, as Cheryl said, finances are important, and I also think that finding support outside of your network. If you don't have, like, I'm an only child, so I didn't have a lot of support. And the Baltimore County, so I think your local municipalities have divisions, and Baltimore County has the Department of Aging, and they were extremely helpful with me. They had conferences and monthly caregiver support groups that you signed on to Zoom. So I think a lot of it, in order for you to survive and be good for your loved one, I think that emotionally and financially, all of those components are going to play a key role in how successful, and how good you'll be. Because after they are gone, you still have to be okay.
Yep. Cleo, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'd just like to share. I agree with everything that everyone has said. You really do have to get into to have some knowledge of the person that you're caring for, his finances, their insurance coverage, what coverage they have for medications, and then to explore what may be available, as was mentioned, the Department of Health and the Department of Aging that support some care coming in. And also emotionally, I just often just have to remind caregivers that you have to take care of yourself. And you also have to remind them that to accept help, and other suggestion is join with other caregivers and reach out when you know you are really needing some emotional support.
Thanks. I have one question already from the audience. How do you deal with the guilt that family members try to make you feel if you have to put your loved one in a facility and can't care for them at home? So how does one handle that guilt?
I like to address that question because with anything in life, it's not, people can make you feel guilty about wearing the wrong shoes today. So it comes a time when you have to make that decision, what's right for the situation, for the person you're caring for, your stress level, their stress level, your home situation. And so if you make the decision on trying to make everyone happy, it's not going to work. What you have to do is know that that person is at a level of care that you cannot sustain to take care of yourself at home. And it does come a time you can get professional people to come in. But as I tell some family members that I work with, that unless you're prepared to pay someone $28 an hour and better to come in around the clock to take care of your loved one, but if you go to an emergency room and they say your loved one needs assisted living, or your loved one needs what they call a wait staff, or they need a level of care that you cannot provide at home, what should you feel guilty about? You are not a medical profession who can offer that. Even if you are, can you sustain doing that 24 hours a day at home? And is it safe to do that? Because sometimes we have homes that do not have handicap accessibilities. And these are what facilities are offering. Sure. They're offering 24 hours, someone there to care for your loved one. They're offering nurses that will come into the facility to help you. They're offering, even now they offer physicians. So don't let that person or people who are not even really helping you with the situation make you feel guilty about what is right for the person you are responsible for caring for.
Thank you, Cheryl. That's difficult because we put ourselves in a guilt trip. So it may not even be others. Sometimes we feel bad ourselves, but we do have to assess the practicality, the level of care needed, and the financial commitment we would have to make, and maybe even, make adjustments to our home, modifications, which, that's an expense. So it's a lot of things to consider when you say, am I going to keep the person home or put them in a facility? Does anybody have anything else to add to how to handle the guilt that people try to put
I
on
would
you?
like to add something, because I think we've often had the conversation, and I think that a lot of times people have a tendency to think, well, you care more for your loved one if you do it at home. And for all of the reasons that Cheryl just mentioned are valid reasons why, if you can't do it, that may be even, I won't say a greater love, but it's as much love as somebody that's doing it at home. So I think that once we can get out of our heads and stop listening to those voices outside, because like she said, I mean, emotionally, before you can be a good caregiver, your emotional state has to be intact. And when you're caring for a loved one, like she said, different levels of care will cause you to have levels of stress that you may not even know were even resident, and once you're thrown in that position, those things tend to come out. And so I think it's a loving act if you realize that it's just too much for you. And don't let anybody make you feel like, it's, oh, you don't love your parent or you don't love your loved one if you have decided. Because I think the most loving act you can do is to love yourself first. And that way you can, give out that love. And yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, because you're only one person. Most caregivers, it's a singular commitment, even though we might have family and friends or siblings, even they don't often come together. Every now and then you hear of a good support system, but for the most part, it's one person taking care of the loved one exclusively, with occasional help from other family and friends. And so, it becomes a lot to consider. So the guilt that people put on you, it might be their own guilt because they aren't, helping you carry the weight. Now, speaking of carrying the weight, we know that people assume, and I'm just going to say assume, that there is government assistance for caregivers and families. So if somebody can clear that up, I'm gonna let each of you all, we'll start with Mary, and then everybody else can chime in. Is there government assistance for caregivers?
Yes, but my most favorite one is Maryland Access Point. And I'll type the link to that website in the chat once y'all finish talking. What I love about the Maryland Access Point is that you can go into that, and this is for the aging population, and you put all of your information, not your personal information, the person you're caring for in that portal. And then you just click off all the resources, all the services that you need, all of your concerns that you need, and you will be directed to the Department of Aging in your jurisdiction. And one thing I like about Baltimore County is one of our favorites. As a matter of fact, we had one of the representatives to, speak to our caregivers ministry. And she has already said, if we ever have any issues, we can contact her directly. So I tell everyone, when you have a family member, a loved one who needs services, go in there, fill out that portal, put their information in there. You do not have to put your personal information in there other than being the contact source. And they will have counselors to contact you. They will connect you to services and programs. And it's really phenomenal. I call it the one-stop shop program. And when it comes to youth who need services, because they are caregivers, there's a lot of grandparents who are caring for their grandkids who are disabled or whatever. I always suggest go and get that child enrolled in the DDA, Developmental Disabilities Association. That is another good one. And then DHR is a phenomenal one when it comes to respite care. They have grants, and our ministry usually downloads the grant form where you can get grants for respite care. You can have someone who's a family member, or you can have someone who you trust to take care of your loved ones. Say, for instance, if you want to go away for a week, or you just want to go out shopping, and it's all year round. I think it's like $250 up to $500, depending on what it is. And then they have respite camps for youth. But I can go on and on about the services, but if you want to contact me directly, you can reach Cleo or I through the MSBC Caregivers at mscministries.org. And we can meet with you one-on-one to, talk more and more about, the various services that are available out there. But it's a lot, but they're there.
I'd just like to add also for persons who are working to also remember to use their FMLA so that way, if you are working, that you can, you won't be docked from your job. So if you're caring for, if you need to care for someone immediately, so that way you can let your job know that. I think that also want to put out some other resources, from using your church and things like that, as far as resources too. But also want to throw some resources out there for I want to say that the Medicaid Waiver Community Program at one point was paying for persons to take care of their loved ones in their home. And it was just a matter of the person being the care provider having completed, having CPR, first aid, which was their minimum qualification to be part of that particular program. And so just putting that out there also for providers, to have, or family members to have their loved ones connected to the Medicaid waiver program, but also to persons like Karen who run assisted living. The Office of Healthcare Quality they actually do have a grant program for providers. And it is on their website, and the forms are on the website for providers also to apply for assistance for assisted livings.
Okay, so I probably needed to talk to Mary Price, because I think that from my experience, my mother was Medicare, and I found, at least with the Department of Aging, that it wasn't a lot of services available to her because her retirement was over their limit, and then she had a bank account, and she had insurance. I mean, she had like insurances and burials and all that kind of thing. And they count all of those things when they're looking to give you finances. Now, I definitely took advantage of the Respite program, and she's right. It's beautiful. They give it to you once a year, and they don't really ask you a lot of questions. You just want to know what's going on with your loved one, and they do whatever they do to consider it. But that has helped me. But I would say that if anybody is in my situation, I would suggest maybe in looking into having your loved one's finances put into a trust, so that the trust can allocate the money. And also, when they start looking at services that your loved one will be available for, they will be able to qualify better. So that was just my experience, especially with Medicare.
And this is Cleo, I just want to mention also for veterans, and the Veterans Administration also has some monies that help certain persons that qualify for programs to help get some care in the home and things like that. So we keep our veterans in mind for those kinds of situations.
That's great. Now, I do have a question related to some of the services from the audience. When you have contacted DDA and the application has been submitted, but it hasn't been followed through, what do you do afterwards? What's the recourse? Who do you go to above them, if they're not doing their job?
Well, with DDA, you can always call and ask to speak to the director of programs, or ask to speak to the director of the program, or you can ask to speak to the supervisor of the case manager that has been assigned to you. And also, you can always contact the if it's a youth, you can always contact the Office of Genetics and people with special healthcare needs over at Maryland Department of Health, and they will also direct you. But always call there and ask to speak to someone higher.
Yeah, I think we forget, that there is somebody over somebody that's over somebody that's over somebody, so, and that is sometimes we don't like to always have to go over people's heads. But if you did submit a form, an application, and now it's been misplaced, or persons can't get back to you about the status of the application, then it is important that we follow up and try to get a resolution, because our loved ones' health and needs are on the line. So that's a good question. How do we advocate? And as caregivers, because we're so busy caring for our loved ones, you know, we don't have time to be on the phone hours and hours a day, you know, trying to get through the government loopholes. What suggestions do you all have to prepare for the journey as a caregiver? You know, if you haven't been on that journey before, which many people haven't still, is it something that people can do so that once they are on the journey, they can, you know, just manage it better? Because I think it can be consuming.
Well, I would say, just as in particular, we start to think about persons taking care of older person or a parent, or and not necessarily old, but maybe a parent or a loved one that has become ill, is to or before they become ill, start trying to plan, start trying to get involved. And I know persons are very independent. Not going to be easy for them to necessarily let you in on their business, but you might want to try to find out more about their personal finances. Start talking about a hard subject to talk about, but some end of life planning, you know, in order to kind of plan ahead. Do they have life insurance? These are the kinds of things to know. And do they have an advanced directive? You know, what do they, these are hard conversations, but you know, what do they want to happen if something should happen to them, or if they are to go ill? So it's, and we often hear that in the African American community, we don't touch this, we don't do this at all, but it's something that we really need to do.
I just think, I think Miss Cleo, you're absolutely right. And I just had a good friend, her husband had a she was his caregiver for 5 years. And, you know, I posed a question to her as being the caregiver. And she said the one thing is that when you begin to become a caregiver, you have to know that each day is not going to be the same. Because if you prepare for today, like you did yesterday, you're going to be frustrated about today. And so the preparation is just to be mindful that each day will be different when you are caring for someone. And then that way you will know to, you know, look for changes. And then the most important thing I always tell persons is, you know, definitely have that information, but also know you be in contact with the person's physician, their doctor, you know, have that, you know, medical contact, medical connection with their physician, so that way, you know exactly what is needed to be done, and what they need to, you know, help with on a daily basis. And so those are, you know, just having that clear picture, of exactly diagnosis, you know, physical capability, and all of those need to be known when you're becoming a caregiver.
One of the things that that I feel like would also contribute to everything, that it's just to add to what others have said, is that I think one of I found spiritually, that was like a real big deal for me. Like I think that when your relationship with Christ is strong, because as a caregiver, you, like she said, no day is the same, and some days it's going to be really, really hard. And I have found that Christ, I was able to go through the hard moments. I also think that I'm a big mental health advocate. So I think that if you lean in towards that, you might want to just kind of check in with yourself, just to make sure that that's something that you are even able to do. And also, I think your physical health plays a huge role. We've got to concentrate on our diets, and we need to exercise. I think all of those components for me are as much a key component to preparing yourself for that journey, because that journey it can be tough. It's rewarding, like she said. It's very rewarding, but that doesn't take away the toughness. And I think that when we gird ourselves up, as the Bible tells us to, then I think that we fare a little bit better.
Yeah, I agree. As much as you can prepare. And a lot of the preparation is asking those hard questions of yourself. Can I do this? Can I be this person? And of your loved one. What's your information? What are your wishes? What can we do to make sure that you're okay? That you get the best care that you can have. Mary, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. I find it very, very important for people, even when you're healthy and you're young, develop a will, even work with your parents while they are basically healthy and they're in their right mind. Ask them, hey, mom, dad, do you guys have a will? If they don't, help them create one. You can go to like lawdepot.com and do it on your own and take it and get it notarized. Or you can go to an attorney. They may charge you some money, but just get those living wills done and get your medical advanced medical directive, and make sure it's like attached to your portal, to your doctor's office, to the hospitals where you regularly go to. So they will have an idea of what you would like, what are your wishes and things like that. And one of the other things that I personally did was develop a revocable trust directive. So when I do pass away, my family doesn't have to go through probate court. It's already written, it's notarized, and it tells everyone where all my assets, where they go, who gets what. But I can talk a little bit more later if you guys want to contact me about those different 3 different documents. But to send your register your will through Baltimore County, if you live in Baltimore County, or you could do it in Baltimore City. All you do is you type up your will, put it in a sealed envelope, mail it, then you put a check in there. I think they charge you like $5 for, and it's on file, when you do pass away, because a part of life is death, and so you need to prepare for that as well. And as far as with the advanced medical directive, that will help the doctors understand what, your parents or whoever you're caring for, what their wishes are. So everybody won't be running around. So, well, our dad told me he doesn't want to be on life support. Well, he told me something different, So I always advise people to get those 3 documents done. And also, when it comes to your parents' homes and things, the state goes back 6 years. So if you see your parents deteriorating, start putting those, moving those assets into a trust, a family member who is trustworthy, or just moving it, because once your loved one gets sick and they have to go into long-term care, their assets going to go with them. So you want to protect a home that that your parents may have, and you want to keep it in your family and things like that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's some good information. Like you said, even having that directive connected to your patient portal in your doctor's office, and the hospital already has it, and things that most of us aren't talking about for our own selves, let alone our loved ones. And so these are things that, while we're able to do it, we need to do it for ourselves so that our loved ones won't have to run around on our behalf and find things and make decisions, under duress and stress, but they will have it typed up, written out. They will know what our wishes are. They will know where everything is. And it's just best for everyone that is caring for, whether it's a child that you're caring for or an older adult that you're caring for. You need these things in place, no matter the age of the person you're caring for, because at the end of the day, when there's some crisis, you won't really be in the mindset to gather everything together at that moment. And so just keep that in mind. So preparation is really knowing where everything is and being able to put your hands on it, or at least knowing what your loved one wants, as far as care goes. And so I think that's important. Finding balance. What do you suggest to caregivers? As we said, most caregivers work part-time, full-time. Many are also taking care of their own families and or have other demanding things that take up their time. So how should they, as caregivers, manage their own stress and try to find balance?
Well, I think that as hard as it's not going to be easy, but I think that we have to get help if there's help available, and don't be so proud and so responsible that nobody can do this but you. Accept help and take some time for yourself. Treat yourself every once in a while. Try to eat healthy, get some exercise, spend some time in the Word of God. I'm a journaler, so I journal. I think that's very helpful because journaling gives you something to sometimes look back at. Reflect on some good times. Think about some memories that you have with your loved ones. And at the same time, you have to recognize your stress, and then recognize some of those things that really relaxes you, and treat yourself. And someone also already said earlier, it helps to find out as much as you can about your loved one's illness, so you know more about what to expect and about their care. So getting involved a little bit more with doctor's appointments and the doctor's information and that kind of thing. So those are some of the things that I suggest for finding some balance.
That's great.
I think that also, and I think that if you had a routine of doing something, and so that you as the caregiver do not get so frustrated and overwhelmed if it's just something so simple as, on this particular day, I go to Bible study, or this particular day I do this for myself. I go get my hair done, my nails done, barbershop and things like that. I think that you need to make sure that if you don't have a sibling or someone else, or you look to some other type of person that can come in to care for your loved one, so that you can stay on that path, because those are the things that mean something to you as a care provider, so that it makes you feel good. You know that you're doing something for your loved one that you're caring for, but also never put yourself so aside that you forget to make yourself feel good, and don't feel guilty about taking that hour, that 2 hour mental break. There is a level of mental stress that goes along with being a care provider. And there is something, well known as care provider burnout. There is, there's a such thing. You can be burned out. So remember to take those mental breaks and do things for yourself.
That's great.
And there
Mary,
may be some time into
Cleo.
seek respite care for your caregiver. There's a point that you may have to do that. That's just a short period of time that you can have a little break.
Yeah, respite.
Also, being part of a caregiver support group, a lot of times you may think that you have a big problem. Then when you get in a support group, your big problem is a little problem compared to someone else, and that helps you understand what you're going through and be able to really release some tension in anger or animosity that you may have going on with yourself. So I think support groups are very instrumental in helping caregivers, get through those trying days and weeks and months, so joining a support group is very effective.
And just to comment, a lot of your major hospitals, I know Mercy, a lot of the major hospitals do offer support groups.
Mm-hmm.
So there are support groups that are in a lot of your major hospitals that can help family members. So, that depending on where your loved one receives care, you might, want to ask to be directed to some type of social worker or something that's there that may be able to direct you to some support groups that are there inside the actual hospital.
Right. Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned it, because over at Johns Hopkins Bayview, they have a support group, and actually our ministry is part of it, because a lot of the churches throughout the state are part of this program. Is called Call to Care, and they have a very good support group, and a lot of the churches come together. I think is it like once or twice a month, Cleo, that they have these call meetings where they talk about caregiving. I think they meet like once or twice a month.
Right.
I know we send it out to our ministry members, but Johns Hopkins, and anyone can be part of that. You don't have to be a patient at the hospital, but it's open to everyone.
I could just say, give yourself a break. Just give yourself a break. Like somebody said, you can't do it all. And somebody else, they might not can't do it like you, but they'll get the job done.
Right.
And so yes, support groups are important. And just, sometimes we think about exercise like, oh, I got to get out here. No, you get out, walk around your block, get some sunshine. Sunshine is so good for us. And just sometimes taking a breath. I know you talk about that, Lady C, on your brain breaks. Just stop for a moment and just take a breath. I mean, I think that, that those simple little things, drinking water, finding a good book that you like to read, or, involving yourself in some type of hobby that you like. You really do have to find something that, will support you and help you to be okay.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's again, all of this information is so awesome. And our hour goes by so quick. It's already over, y'all. It's so
We're over?
Yeah, I know. But it's not, we're still being we're still live. But I want to thank you all for all of the great information that you gave us tonight. I do have another question. Okay, we are going to provide the information that was shared this evening. So we will make sure that we get follow-up information from everyone that shared resources today. So we want those resources so we can put them back out on the web page so people can follow up. So we know we have the MSBC Caregivers Ministry, but we're going to make sure you have all of that contact information and those different websites that were mentioned. So we are taking care of that for everyone. And I appreciate all our guests. I thank God for the village, because it does take a village as caregivers. No one knows everything about everything. And so we need people in our community that can help. And so again, I like to just thank you ladies for your expertise and your experience in this area. And don't be surprised if people are going to find your numbers or something somewhere. They're going to hunt you all down. They're going to say, wait a minute, I need to talk to this person like for 5 minutes at least,
Good.
which is good. So we're going to have, again, I said, we're going to put on the website contact information so that if you need assistance caring for your loved ones, you can get it from the different agencies and the MSBC Caregivers Ministry, who is a wealth of information. Remember that the Renaissance Center is here walking alongside you in this caregiver journey. And we have the 2 free sessions. You can call 410-409-0025 if you're a Baltimore County or Baltimore City resident, and take advantage of those sessions. Again, thanks for joining us with this RC chat. Next month, we will be doing our afternoon of caring and sharing in lieu of our RC chat. So stay tuned for that. That'll be on December the 11th, which is a Saturday. So
That's my birthday.
all right. See, okay now. Well, you can come care and share with us and then celebrate your birthday. But
she shares a good birthday.
Cleo
That's
has
actually
been
my
a
daughter's
long
birthday,
time
too.
participant in our caring and sharing. So we thank God for all of you all. I hope to see you next month at the Caring and Sharing on December the 11th from 1 to 2:30 p.m. on Saturday, December the 11th. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
You're
You
welcome.
too. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
It's really good for somebody to recognize.